The EPA accidentally exposes the thought process behind strong-arm tactics in the oil and gas industry. So where does this fit into Obama's energy policy? I'm Allen Barton. Stand by for Front Page.
But as I said, oil and gas is an enforcement priority in 27, so we're going to spend a fair amount of time looking at oil and gas production. And I was in a meeting once and I gave an analogy to my staff about my philosophy of enforcement, and I think it was probably a little crude and maybe not appropriate for the meeting, but I'll go ahead and tell you what I said. It was kind of like how the Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go to a little Turkish town somewhere, they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, they'd crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years. And so you make examples out of people who are, in this case, not complying with the law.
Good example. Joining me in the studio, Keith Lockitch, fellow at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. That was top EPA official Al Armendariz, explaining the tactics he supports for enforcement of rules on oil and gas producers, or he was. Now he's backtracking real fast, real fast. So, Keith, we'll lead off with you. Devil's advocate, what's the problem here? He's trying to talk about deterrence. And if your job is protecting the environment and you think the oil and gas industry is poisoning the environment and you want to send a message, what's the big deal? I mean, isn't this just the real world?
This speaks volumes about the whole environmentalist philosophy, the whole idea. So first of all, 86% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuels, so you can't just dismiss them out of hand. The producers of oil, coal, natural gas, these provide crucial values to people's lives. These are heroes of productivity. But the whole philosophy is that they're guilty until proven innocent. And the whole idea, this is an attack on industry, on productivity, on energy. And I mean, Ayn Rand wrote a whole book, Atlas Shrugged, where she basically portrays businessmen as the productive heroes that all of us depend on for all the crucial values in our lives. And this perspective just is exactly the opposite. They're criminals that need to be prosecuted. Let's crucify them.
Terry, the EPA has been getting a lot of attention under the Obama administration as sort of the quintessential government agency just sort of gone mad, autocratic, inefficient, and the ability with this kind of thought process is to go in and literally shut down industries. They've shut down coal to a large degree. It's going to be impossible to build a coal refinery. So what do you think in terms of, have we seen this at work in the day-to-day operations of the EPA, or is this, has it been just sort of like pumped up as the bad boy?
No, absolutely. We have seen it at work. And, Al Armendariz, with his blandness, is the bland bureaucratic face of eco-fascism. I mean, you hear the jackboots in the background because this is what these people believe. They believe it's their duty, their job, to stomp their boot down on the neck of American capitalism, to stop it from being such an evil polluter, and that's what they do. They've gone after companies, gas companies in Texas, in Wyoming, in Pennsylvania, which is where all the natural gas happens to be. They've gone after the auto industry. They're going after businesses' smokestacks aggressively. Now, I'm not against having clean air, but we have to understand there are costs and benefits.
They've declared carbon dioxide to be a noxious, poisonous gas, which needs to be regulated, but the joke is.
Sadly, they got the imprimatur of the Supreme Court on that one, including more than one conservative justice, and that is just a travesty.
All right, so on another note, the prominent global warming scientist James Lovelock admits that he was, get this, alarmist. He was alarmist about climate change. Keith, care to comment on the recanting here by
I mean, this
Dr.
fits
Lovelock?
right in with the EPA issue because the whole methodology is to present these apocalyptic scenarios. And then, the retraction is printed on page A14, right? So they portray this idea that it's almost a religious idea that we are sinners, the oil and gas producers are evil sinners that are bringing about apocalypse. And so the whole jackboots stomping down, and the idea that we have to crucify them comes out of the same mentality. So there's these apocalyptic scenarios that people put forward to justify to rationalize the idea that we have to clamp down on the criminals.
Terry, anything here? I mean, I remember I was just old enough to remember in the 70s there was a scare about a new ice age coming, and then in 40 years it's obviously we're going to be taken over by ocean waters rising and flooding our cities. So it just seems as though it kind of goes back and forth. Whatever can be imminent and can be screamed about. Yeah. But what do you think of the climate change movement? It feels as though with the East Anglia sort of fiasco, that the movement is suffering somewhat.
Yeah, well, it is suffering, and I've been through a number of these enviro scares, so I've seen how they work. I remember quite well when I was in college in the 1970s, there was the global cooling scare. It was going to be cold. We were going to dip into a new ice age. Why? Industry was doing it. In the 1980s,
all particles in the air are keeping the sun's rays from warming the Earth.
We're in big trouble here.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, it was the ozone layer. The ozone layer was disappearing. We're going to fry, and now it's global warming. Well, look, global warming is premised on some very, fairly simple ideas, really. One is, and this is how all the models work. When you look at the UN's models, there are 21 of them. They all work the same way, basic way. For every unit of carbon added to the atmosphere, there will be an additional temperature increase. Well, over the last 14 years, we have had a substantial amount of carbon added to the atmosphere, but we've had no temperature increase. So that tells you that every one of those models is premised on the wrong idea, and yet they continue to make these projections and forecasts based on the same models.
Well, and then you also have this sort of correlation versus causation fallacy at work. Maybe, look, the last major age on Earth was an ice age. By definition, we have been getting warmer since long before someone invented the steam engine. So what if it is still getting warmer? Does that mean that we caused it to get warmer? There's that whole argument as well. I don't want it to become a science thing, but...
No, and it also doesn't mean that warming is bad.
Yeah,
I mean, the presumption.
And it doesn't mean that tomorrow it doesn't start getting cold for some other reason.
That's correct.
A massive volcanic explosion or something like. There's so many variables.
And the thing that's missing from the whole debate is the fact that industrialization is what keeps us safe from natural disasters. So the whole idea that we have to clamp down on industrialization, stop the development of energy, which drives everything we do, as a way of keeping safer from climate disasters is completely bizarre.
All right, gentlemen. Good discussion. Thank you very much. For Keith and Terry, I'm Allen Barton, and you've been watching Front Page.